Hi, welcome everyone to Startup Impact Summit 2020. So this is our first virtual conference connecting amazing speakers and moderators worldwide. So today we are super excited to put up Growth Impact stage with this group of entrepreneurs, community builders who are going to let's understand more about how the startup mentorship works, how this communities for mentorships works exactly. But without further ado, I would like to pass the stage to Nicole, our moderator today, to introduce the sections and also our speakers. Please give a round of applause.
Thank you, Felix. So I'm Nicole Fu. I consult tech startups in growth and marketing. I've been doing so for over 7 years. I'm based in London, and I come from a background in STEM. So I usually work with high-tech, deep tech startups, previously mostly SaaS, but increasingly moving towards social environmental impact. So I'm very excited to hear that there's a SDG stage at this summit. And also very excited to introduce our speakers. Foti is the founder of GrowthMentor, and it's a community of growth mentors to help startup founders grow, wherever they are at in their journey. And I've been part of this community for almost 2 years. And Lalitha is a director at TechStars, of which I'm sure we're all familiar with. I've been a big fan of, and I've been involved a little bit via Startup Weekend, which we'll talk a bit more later. But fun fact, in a previous life, Lalitha was a host and MC for TEDx events. So I hope I do her some just here. But maybe we can get Lalitha to tell us a bit more about her background, and then Foti as well. And Foti, you have to also give us a fun fact, please.
This is like every time I drive by and I look at a basketball court, I always like to look at the nets, like just to see if they're good or not. Like I'm a fanatic basketball player.
That is such a specific fun fact as well. I never would have expected that to come out of his mouth.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, maybe he was blushing, I thought. All right.
Yeah, no, that was some real digging that you did. I mean, I didn't expect that to come out of your mouth either, Nicole. But yeah, you're doing great. You're off to a great start. I've no issue with it. Going well. But just a little bit more about me, I guess, to give you a bit of context. Like Nicole said, I'm a director at TechStars. Very specifically, I work in the community team. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart. It's something that we do and we empower and we build around on all of the programs that we have within TechStars. So I'm very excited to get into it. I've been at TechStars for the last 5.5 years. Specifically focused on APAC and working with all kinds of partners and programs in the region. So, yeah.
Thank you.
That's a little bit about me.
So I'm the founder of GrowthMentor. Before founding GrowthMentor, I've been the head of growth at EuroVPS, which is a managed hosting provider, and first non-engineer hire over there. So I had to learn all of the marketing stuff myself, which kind of motivated me towards this idea of, let's create a mentorship platform for other marketers who are kind of in a similar position. And that kind of transitioned into a mentorship platform for founders as well. So launched around 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years actually. Yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are, yeah.
Oh, I must have been like early on then. I feel like I've been there for almost 2 years, but cool.
September 2018 we launched.
That's when I moved to London.
Yeah.
Right. So we're all here today to talk about why mentorship is important, specifically within the startup community. So recently was Father's Day, and more recently was Foti's dad's birthday. And he shared a very nice post about how his dad is his biggest growth mentor. So I thought maybe we could start by sharing our positive experiences with mentorship and why we think it's important. and it could be, I'm putting you on the spot again here, Foti. It could be in a personal mentor capacity, or maybe a bit of both. One specifically that in respects to startups. So maybe Foti first, if you'd like to share about why mentorship is important.
Yeah, for sure. Mentorship, like, it's always been near and dear to my heart because of like the way that my dad raised me, in a sense, through a lot of storytelling and telling me about his experiences as an entrepreneur in the early 70s when he started out, and the grind that he had to go through. And although I never really lived what he did, just listening to those stories, like, I did feel like I was there for a part of it, in a sense, and that's something that kind of built my core values moving forwards as an entrepreneur as well, and also as a person. I mean, obviously you take from your parents, but that was my first sort of like mentorship experience. Another like funny story is that my dad's had a big mentorship story as well. When he started out as a real estate developer, he was initially in the headwear industry making hats, Greek fisherman caps. But he transitioned into real estate development, but he was new at that. He had no idea how to do any of that. And he saw this one, master contractor sitting at a cafeteria, and he's like, "Hey, you know what? I just want to pick your brains and ask you everything about like how to build commercial real estate buildings." And they sat down for, I think it was like a couple of hours. He paid him like $5,000 actually for that. And he's like, "Look, if I don't give you that value back," this was in the 80s, early 80s, I'll give you that money back. And he's like, "Look, after the first hour of the call, like, you just saved me $30,000 because I was going to do this, and this with, how I was going to hire my contractors." And but that story was embedded in me from an early age. So like, basically being able to leverage the experiences and insights of other people that have been there, done that before you. Like, I've always known that was kind of a superpower to have. And that's my sort of interesting story about mentorship in general.
Did you have one also about when you were starting GrowthMentor? You spoke, there was someone that helped you who had been there, done that also, if I remember correctly?
In regards to like marketplaces, or
to building GrowthMentor, I think there was one person in particular maybe that you bounced it off.
That I made a post recently on LinkedIn about like a developer, and like Maciek from, was that the, in any case, it was, I think you're talking about that one. But yeah, like for a technical perspective, right? Like, how do I actually build a Ruby on Rails application without knowing how to code? Like, and talking to somebody who is technical, who understands the dynamics of building complicated software, even just for like an hour call with that, kind of walking through what the ideas are, you get a really good understanding of whether something's possible or not. And like, once I realized that was technically feasible and I could theoretically pull this off, like, that's kind of what gave me that impetus to keep pushing and not abandon the initial idea I had.
Thank you. I think we'll explore this a bit later, like formal versus informal mentorship, right? Like what you just mentioned, like an hour session seemed like that would maybe have done the trick, like whether, and push you in the right direction, like whether you want to build this yourself or like get help, right? But in other cases, maybe the same ongoing person might be more beneficial. Thank you, Foti. Lalitha, do you also have a story to share about your personal experiences with how important
with mentorship? I actually really resonated with what Foti just said, because my dad similarly is like the first person, I would say, I guess, if we're thinking about mentorship as a journey, the first person that I've ever gone to for like advice and continuously go back to bounce things off of. And it's something that's happened in like every part of my professional journey. So I totally resonate and understand exactly what Foti is saying. And I'm sure people who are listening could stop to think and be like, oh my God, some of the time people think about mentorship and it's in a very specific professional context. It's in a very specific startup-y context. It's definitely a term that's thrown around here more than it is anywhere else, but it starts off like way before you've even entered in here. And some of the times, you know, for me specifically, the two people in my life right now that I turn to for that advice and just come back to as mentorship, I never went into those relationships thinking that it was going to be anything, right? So obviously one is still my dad. I still bounce things off with him. It's very funny though, because recently I've had to constantly remind him to stop and think of what he would do as me and not him like right now going through all these experiences and being like, you know, let's take a step back. What did you do when you were 30? And the other one was and is my colleague in TechStars. His name is Oko, and we've been working together for the same amount of time. So we've kind of grown together, but he accidentally became like a mentor of mine because we worked really well together, and I felt that the way he was teaching me or guiding me as my peer was so profoundly different than everybody else that I was working with, and it evolved into a relationship. So sometimes when you think about the mentorships that are happening in your life, you may not even realize it's there, and sometimes it's not even necessary to ask that formal step if it's a relationship that's working, if it's a growth productive, like impactful back and forth that you're constantly having. Just be conscious of it and then be intentional about how you're using the time that you have with these people.
That sounds kind of growth hacky. And when I think about it, also, I'm sure all of us have different kinds of relationships where like when this particular person in your life is like particularly patient, so you go to them for that kind of thing, or like someone for something else. So you kind of growth hack your own mentorship circle together, or who you look to for different things. All right, then moving mentorship towards this like startup space, why do we think entrepreneurs need experienced mentors?
Who should go first? All right, I'll hop on. Yeah, I would say like the biggest thing that I say about this is reducing your unknown unknowns. There's just so much that entrepreneurs and founders have to know about in today's day and age, right? Like it was a little bit simpler before this like internet explosion in my dad's era, right? Like he had his one sort of vertical he was in, and that was enough, right? But like now, if you wanna launch something, like you definitely have to be on top of the tech if it's a tech startup. But then also like how are you gonna grow it and take it to market? And there's so many components of that, and there's just a lot that you can miss. And just being able to jump on a call with somebody or have a meeting with somebody face to face, right? And like have them tell you like, hey, you know, watch out, you're missing this entire like whole chapter. Like if you're made aware of that, then you know you finish that call and you can go back on your own time and spend a couple of days reading up on that. And you know, before you know it, like you're at a decent level, right, of proficiency on that thing that you didn't even know existed before. So I think like the biggest benefit of mentorship from entrepreneurs is just avoiding the blind spots, and specifically the type of blind spots that can like seriously derail your progress. Because I mean, there's certain sorts of mistakes which you probably should make here and there to grow and develop your character and also your skills. I mean, that's how you grow, right? Through failure. But there's certain mistakes which like you really don't want to make, which can be kind of like end, like it can kind of end stuff like prematurely. So.
Yeah, totally. But to play devil's advocate here and to like maybe like echo like a startup ism that like, you know, everyone will tell you something different, right? Like some people would say, do it, don't do it, whatever. So what's the catch here? Like taking it with a grain of salt, following your gut no matter what, or
yeah. That's a great point. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think mentors shouldn't really like tell you what to do. They should just kind of ask you the questions and kind of let you know about certain things that maybe they know about, but you don't, but like not really be forceful. But generally though, like to go back into the thing, right? Like I always tell people, don't believe that one person, what they say. Talk to many people, get many different points of view, and then use like your own sort of internal pattern recognition to find the commonalities in what all of these different mentors are saying. And then that's how you can extract the most value out of it, I think.
Yeah, definitely agree with everything the both of you just said. One of the reasons that experienced mentors are so important is also because it saves everybody just time, like so much time. But at the same time, to Nicole's point, mentor whiplash is such a real thing, and people should not go into having a relationship with their mentor if they think that they're just going to provide answers, because they're basically your spirit guides, right? They're challenging you, they're asking you those questions, they're making you see perspectives that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, because let's face it, as a founder, like you go into this tunnel vision, you're in this like very narrow hole of where you see the light at the end of your tunnel, and that's what you're driving towards, that's what you're grinding towards and what you're hustling towards. And mentors are really there to be those checkpoints, to be like, okay, great that you're going full speed ahead here, but maybe stop and like look to your right and stop and look to your left and ask yourselves, like, how are those things going to help you get to that endpoint faster and better? So that I think is the best reason to have mentors, like in general, like whether they're, you know, so experienced or just a little bit more experienced than you are, whatever new perspective that you're going to get is going to help you see things better at the end of the day. But it's also your judgment call that has to come into play. You have to trust yourself as a founder when you're getting this advice, because you shouldn't treat it as the be all and end all. You know, they've come to you with like, the grass is blue, and you're like, of course the grass is blue. How could anybody have said that it wasn't blue? Oh my God, you know, and if you're not questioning them back, then it doesn't become a very productive relationship. It basically becomes one where people are spoon feeding you answers and you're not learning much, and you're not growing at a pace that you could be growing at.
So is that like a quality of a good mentor then, like one who like would like then challenge you and not who will let you challenge them, right? Who, like, some people like to don't like to be told that they're wrong.
I mean, I would say it is. I would hate if the person I was talking to was like, no, I've said it, whatever I'm saying is right. If they're right, and that's great. But if you are asking a question and they can't justify it, or they can't back up why they're right, then maybe we need to learn together why it was wrong. And being open, not having, as a mentor, not having your own teacup full, and, you know, also using whatever you're learning from whoever you're mentoring, whatever startup you're helping out with, to grow your bank of knowledge, so that the next person you help is gaining so much more, is really important, I would say.
So Lalitha mentioned that the two mentors that she currently has is her dad and her colleague at TechStars, Oko. And I did come across that, like, Oko led a how to be an effective mentor workshop recently. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Can we ask you about that? Do you have insights from that?
Yeah, I wasn't at the workshop, but it's basically like within TechStars, we live and breathe mentorship, right? Like all of the programs that we do, one of the biggest anchors to all of them is that we think we know great founders, and we know how to build them. And one of those ways is matching them with a mentor that's going to be compatible with them and help them grow in the best way possible. Like that's really what we do. So as part of that, we try to build great mentors everywhere we go, like outside of programs that we do. So that was the program that Oko just ran. It's a series that we're trying to do more and more of, especially during coronavirus times. It's good to have extra content out there. But as a base note, there's also this article that our co-founder David Cohen wrote a couple of years ago, and it lists down like all of the great qualities that TechStars looks at when we're picking or building mentors. And it's called the TechStars Mentor Manifesto. And if you just Google that, it's like, I think the first article that hits the Google search. It's a very helpful, succinct list of, it's like 20 plus qualities that, you know, when you're mentoring, you should have them instilled in you. So making sure that as much as you're talking, you're being a good listener, making sure that you're being direct, telling the truth, not sugarcoating it, but not being harsh, you know, all of those things. It's a great first read if anybody's thinking of doing extra mentoring and they want a nudge in the right direction.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some overlap between like the key points of like all these like business books,
Yeah.
like how 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and like how to win friends and influence people. And then I have like notes after, I mean, I have the Spark notes, right? Like, and I try like before like big meetings and stuff, I try and look over them, and I am sure they're basically the 20 things on that article you mentioned. But like,
yeah, exactly.
as a mentor, like concurrently having to remember these 20 things and exhibit them. Oh, I think that's a learning game for mentors also.
It's tough, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Foti,
human 101, right? Be a good human, and then everything else just kind of falls into place.
Do unto others, right? As you would. I mean,
Yeah.
I just actually reread that book, influence how to win friends and influence people with Dale Carnegie. It's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, it's really a human like thing, right? Like you just have to not like tell them what to do and be compassionate, empathetic. Don't just like listen, because like I see some people and they listen, but they listen just to like talk afterwards. It's like waiting like the timer to finish so they can just like get in. But because there's just like every case is unique, isn't it? Right? Like every single call that I go into, it's like completely different. So you know, it's you have to listen and really try and digest it. It's like in a spousal relationship in a sense, right? You have to take it, listen, and digest, and kind of be a good partner in that moment, that short amount of time that you got.
Foti, you must have been on a lot of calls on your platform. And I don't know if you've sat in on other growth or other mentor sessions, or I mean, I don't think you provide training because I haven't received any, but from what you've from your own experience or from sitting in, do you have any tips here?
Yeah, so like I haven't sat in on any mentoring calls, but I've done like over 200 of them so far, and I'm not a professional mentor or anything. I haven't taken any course. I just kind of winged it from the beginning. I do think that the some tips. All right, let's go back into the second question you said, like some tips, right? I think it's good to like be broad but also specific at the same time. I know that can sound a little bit counterintuitive, but like there's a time and a place for everything. Like at some points I get on calls with mentees and they're like super like, how do I do this PPC campaign, right? And I'm like, hold on a second. All right, let's zoom out a little bit. Like, tell me a little bit about your business model, right? Like, what are your unit economics? Like, what's your lifetime? Like, and sometimes it's good in the beginning of a call, like a mentor should really like try and get the lay of the land, and that's where those kind of zoom out questions come in to really understand and get the mentee talking, right? Get them talking, get them explaining things, because I think, you know what, in my opinion, the best end result that can happen from a mentor-mentee call is that the mentor doesn't say at all like what the solution is. Like just by talking and answering the questions, some sort of like synapse will fire in their brain. They'll be like, oh my God, you know, like some eureka, and they'll figure something out. And that's basically the Socratic method of questioning. Like, okay, why are you doing this? All right, well, why'd you think of that? And then kind of go down that rabbit hole. But after a certain point, maybe this could be the second call or the third call in the relationship, you might want to get a little bit more specific as well and dive really deep into things. And that there's something to be said about like the two different ways of approach of like a mentorship call. Like specific, super specific versus like kind of like high level broad. I think there's a place for both.
Yeah, I realize more and more mentees to get the most out of their time in advance. They provide context by text, by messaging first, and then also, of course, in the beginning, like verbally introduce it a little bit. But that's interesting you say about the repeat calls, because I haven't had a repeat call, and maybe we'll revisit that, like ongoing mentorship. But to Lalitha's point about the how to be an effective mentor workshop, I think you mentioned two things. Well, I heard there were two things I wanted to follow up on. One was mapping, right? Like is location, is that a factor in matching? Yeah.
I think in physical programs, for sure, location is definitely a factor in matching, and that's really because especially when we are doing in-person programs, you want to have that consistent, ongoing relationship, and if they're not there, sometimes it's tough. And also, whenever we have in-person programs, ideally you also want to grow those local communities. So working with mentors on the ground is just a big bonus, because they're going to give you the best kind of context. But that's not to say that for us it's always about location, because even during in-person programs, if our managing director that's running it thinks that they know a mentor within our network who's in, like, 3 countries over or whatever, that they think is going to help this person out better than anybody that we currently have on the ground, it's a connection that's going to happen regardless. So in short, I don't think location really matters, because to us it's about really, like Foti saying, understanding the founder, understanding what they're doing. Every mentor relationship, every mentee relationship is different. There is no one playbook or jigsaw piece that you can put and it fits everybody. And knowing them well enough to be able to recommend people that are not even on the ground, that's when you've been able to help them, like, beyond the physical space that you're there. So matching people based on location should never be a constraint, right? It should be about what's the best match. How do I get the best match? How do I understand them well enough to do that?
I forget my second question, but on that, besides location, it got me thinking about, like, industries and verticals, right? Like,
yeah,
it would be obvious initially that, like, okay, we want someone maybe in the same vertical as what this startup is building. But then thinking of what Foti said about there's a time for, like, specific questions and also overall higher level ones, it got me thinking how with like marketing, I love like cross industry things. So I'm always on keeping an eye out on, like, bus stop ads and stuff like that for like vegan food or something random, and then applying it to software. I love crossing like that. So I think maybe I thought I was unique and great. But maybe that works for mentors also, right? Maybe you want one mentor in your industry, you want one not necessarily to provide unique perspective. Any thoughts on this, you both?
Yeah, I think oh no, okay. I would say even for you, Nicole, like earlier you were saying how you're from a deep tech background and you love working with deep tech startups and solutions, but you also have knowledge that applies across the board, so and sometimes I'm sure whatever you've done with deep tech startups applies to other startups that you're helping out as well. So industry is important when it's specific. Like to Foti's point earlier, it's specific about a specific question that you need that expertise in. But a good mentor is a good mentor, I would say, across the board. If they're challenging you in the right way, they're getting you to get those eureka moments happen, you have that right chemistry going, you've built a good trust, I would say industry doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's what I'm seeing from the calls on GrowthMentor. It's not really that big of a determinant. I mean, we have this industry filter where you can filter mentors by, and I don't really see that many people clicking through it anyway. And those that come to me in the beginning and they're like, "Do you have somebody in my industry?" And then I do a lot of matchmaking calls. So like I'll jump on a call with the mentee and really try to understand their pain points, and then like match them based on like personality fit is. I think personality fit is even more important than like industry
Yeah.
fit, in my opinion. Like for mentors and mentees.
Agreed 100%.
See, Lolita and I seem like high energy and stuff, right? But like I would like someone like you, Foti, like my opposite, like a calmer person actually. So I think personality fit, really, I would like a personality opposite. Yeah.
No, but I think that's the personality fit, right? Because just
That is the personality.
to your exact point, Nicole, like the people in my life that I trust so much to be that mentor, they're the complete opposite from me in terms of like, you know, that crazy energy level, or when they're talking, it's So I don't think it's about personality
Match.
like twinning.
Yeah.
It's about like Foti said, personality fit. Like what's gonna complement you the best.
Yeah.
One of the questions we have on our onboarding form is like, do you want a mentor that is soft around the edges, or tells it to you like as it is? And you know, people have different preferences, and I try my best to kind of match, like, because I kind of know the mentor's personality types. But yeah, I think it's really good to have that connection, because it's all about trust at the end of the day. And when you're a mentee, you're in a position of vulnerability. Let's be honest, right? Like you're saying, I need help. This is what I feel is the problem. Maybe even with myself, like what my weaknesses are as a professional or as a person, right? And like you need to get. You're there like open and waiting for somebody to come and hit you with what they're going to say, right? So like if you don't feel comfortable with that person, it's not going to work, because you might get defensive. And once you start getting defensive, that's when the ego comes into play. And you know, we all know about the ego and how dangerous that is to growth, right? So like
I'm sorry, what is this ego you talk about?
Yeah.
A question for the mentors on your form could be like, what's your Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, and kind of like do a machine learning sort of like cross path check on that. Yeah.
All right, so we talked about what makes good mentors. We talked about how location and what else didn't matter. Industry doesn't matter. So where do we find good mentors to help launch a startup?
I'll start, I guess. So
yeah.
I'm not gonna plug GrowthMentor, but yeah, I mean.
But everybody should check out GrowthMentor.
Everybody should check it out. But I'll talk about the other ways, which are completely free. So one way, which I think it's the most obvious one, is like within your own workplace. Right? Like I've had some pretty good mentorship relationships in my workplace. One of them was from my older brother, and the other's from a colleague that I had, which wasn't like we were side by side working together on a project, right? But like he had so much to impart upon me that wasn't even really related to work, but a lot of it kind of like overlapped, more of like ways of thinking and stuff. So yeah, like within the work space is like I think obvious, but like I don't know. What about you, Lalitha? Like Lalitha?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can go about finding mentors. Totally at work, right? Depending on what you want the mentorship for. Networking events within your community is a great way. I think when you're trying to find a mentor to start with and you don't have any context and you haven't really done anything just yet, it's very hard to go into these things and be like, I need a mentor and I need one now. You know, it's really about taking a step back and thinking about what you need insight on to begin with, and then finding relationships to build. Because if you're not going specifically to something like GrowthMentor, where you're finding someone to help you build a thing that you know you want to build, and you're just looking for that insight or that advice or to get going in finding a group of people that are like-minded enough to give you perspective, it is about building relationships. And you need to, as a founder, you need to stop and think about who you want to build those relationships with and what kind of insight and advice you're looking out of those relationships. So going in with a mindset that's also give first, where you're, as much as you're trying to get something from them, you also want to give value, because that's when you're going to build the most authentic version of those relationships. People don't cringe and go like, oh, this dude just wants like my advice. He just wants my experience. I don't want to talk to him.
Yeah.
Because there are those people that do that, right? At networking events or like community gatherings. Startup grind events are great places to go and find like-minded people. We do a program called Startup Weekend, and that's more for you to like hack across a startup, in 54 hours. And specifically with those programs, it's like sometimes they're free, sometimes it's like a super low entry rate, but they actually curate the mentors in your community together. And so it's a great entry point if you're looking to mingle and meet with those people to grow your network better.
So I love that you mentioned Give First, which I think is like Y Combinator's
Dude, it's TechStars.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you both.
It's our hashtag.
Well, you two, both YC and TechStars are like the two top accelerators, right? So sorry. We
funny.
might be. We
Oh
are.
my god, I'm done with this panel.
That might be edited out. All right.
Please don't.
Yes, you're right.
No, it's good. Keep it in, Felix. Keep it in.
But no, okay. Like I mean, I've been in the startup world my whole career, right? YC and TechStars are like the two ones. But so I mean, I think why. If I can just talk about YC for a little bit, like why part of their mission, right, was that like anyone can apply for funding, right? You don't have to know someone who knows someone. You don't have to schmooze and be whoever, right?
Yep.
So about that and about what you two said, to me, if I map out like this mentorship, there's like formal organizations where we maybe pay hundreds or like $1,000, right, to join, and then you get paired with someone who's a director at a company or on a board, right? Formal things like that, and then a bit less formal is through an accelerated program, maybe like TechStars that who like offer you mentors once a week or however often, right? And then also, of course, through other platforms like GrowthMentor. I told Foti this when I interviewed to be a Growth Mentor. That years and years ago, Clarity. Do we know Clarity? Of course, I mean Foti knows Clarity. Clarity, Lalitha, are you familiar with Clarity?
No.
It was a platform that you like book calls with any expert. So I guess GrowthMentor is like specific, but like Clarity was like, they had a broader range. And I tried to get on there once a long time ago. So I was excited that years later, something specific to my niche came around. But so there's, if we map it out, to me, there's like formal things, these organizations, and then accelerators, and then platforms like Clarity, GrowthMentor, many more. And then, there are more informal ones. So I in my professional career, I've always like thought like, oh, I never had a mentor. I would love like an older, preferably female one that I can like, like shadow, and I'm still looking for that kind of, and then preferably like in a role. But if I think about how I've hacked my mentorship, right? Like, at like you said, Lalitha, like at events and conferences, I especially from Collision in New Orleans, which now moved to Toronto, I think. I found out about and like met, I was in the audience, they were on stage. I met Chris Saka and XVC and Alexis Ohanian, and then I think they come off as such good people, and then thereafter I've created like a private Twitter list called Mentors, and like they're on it. I have very few people on it, right? So consuming their content, right? Like they don't know me, but like they're a mentor kind of. I look to them as a mentor, right? And then so that's why I mentioned this YC thing, that like YC saying funding can be for everybody, right? But I think mentorship can be for everybody. You can do it through books, like follow people you admire through books, like you just read their books, podcasts, things like that. Cool.
Can I just add to that very quickly? Which is, I just wanted to say your point is so good, because a lot of people also are scared to approach mentorship because it's got the label mentorship on it, and it is a lot of trust building where people don't want to put all of their dirty laundry on a table for somebody else to like come and see and help them sort through it. I mean, at the end of the mentorship journey, you're always grateful you've gone through it, but starting it, sometimes it is tough. And knowing that there are easy, warmer ways for people to just get in touch with mentoring, learning from people, knowing that that is a form of mentoring, making sure people understand that there is no one way and there is no right or wrong way. It's whatever that's working for you and helping you move forward, right? That's the thing. And I will, one more point that I want to add. Maybe you should ask your next question first, because maybe my answer is like gonna affect your next question.
No. Let's hear it.
I was just gonna say that as one of the biggest lessons I've learned from whether it's finding mentors or getting people to find their own mentors is asking. Like, a lot of people are just scared to ask, like go up to somebody and just be like, I need your advice, or will you be my mentor? It's a very simple thing to do. People overlook it a lot, but it's one thing that will get you results, and it helps you rip the Band-Aid off, faster. Yeah. It reduces the scare. It reduces the anxiety that you feel. And also, the worst people are going to say is like, no. And you move on and you find somebody else who's willing to be on this journey with you, right? You don't sit wondering if they want to be part of it, and you'll never know unless you ask. So my biggest actionable thing, yeah.
When you want to ask out a significant other, just do it,
There you go. Mentorship is like dating.
One thing not to say though is, can I pick your brains for 10 minutes? It's like,
yeah.
No, don't do that.
Do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna end on that. What are your biggest tips, right? So now we have two, right?
There you go.
Now we have two already.
Transition.
But okay, so that asking. So what do we feel about like this kind of formal mentor relationship? Like, will you be my mentor? Can we meet every quarter, every month? Versus like, maybe more one-offy things through an accelerator or through booking GrowthMentor call. Is it also like a case-by-case thing, whether like you need something built on Ruby on Rails and that just requires a one-time hour call, or maybe hand-holding through the early stages of building your startup? What are your thoughts on these kind of different mentorship relationships, and is it based on like the issue, also the stage of the startup?
Yeah, you just said it right now. It's based on the stage, I think. Like, if you're at a sort of earlier ideation, pre-product market fit stage, then maybe it would be a good idea to like have a single long-term relationship that you can know that that's that person to turn to during that early sort of I don't know what to do next kind of phase. But like, if you are at scale, you've launched and you're having like growth issues, like there's so many different components in growth. Like, there's contents and PPC and there's product analytics. Like, there's so many different things, and it's impossible to find one person that's going to be an expert at everything. So that's where I think it really makes sense to kind of broaden out and get different perspectives. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree. I think it's dangerous as well when you go into having a relationship with a mentor and you expect them to be everything for you in every way. So compartmentalizing, knowing why they're there and what they're contributing towards you, and then filling up the other spaces with other people who are going to help you, it'll be better in the long run. They're magical unicorns to some extent, but they're not in other ways.
They're all normal
they're not
people.
Like, yeah.
You and me, right?
Exactly.
Nobody knows.
Don't look at them like exactly. Don't look at them like they are magical unicorns.
They're winging the mentorship call as they talk. Thinking in their heads like, oh shit, I hope they like what I'm telling them. Like, everyone has their insecurities about it. Like, am I adding value?
Yeah, and keeping in mind that your mentor probably has a mentor of their own, so
Yeah.
everyone's learning and everyone's growing, and if you can get on that pace and fit early on, you just start to build trust. And essentially at the end of the day, it's the more trust you have, the more honest your conversations are going to be, the faster you're going to move forward because they're honest conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we're almost out of time, and we've spent most of it talking about, the importance of mentorship, which was the whole point
The
of the
whole
session.
topic. So good job,
Yeah.
us.
However, you two are unique in that you also build communities of mentors, right? So if we could share a bit about that, and maybe we can end that.
Yeah.
You want to go?
I
Fine,
can go
I'll
first,
take.
sure. Okay, you go first. You go first.
All right, all right. So how we built a community? The only reason we have a community is because of the vetting process, and like, great vetting, you got to have the expertise and so on and so forth, but that's pretty simple to kind of weed out based on like even just a cursory glance at a LinkedIn profile. But I think the biggest the challenge of building a mentorship community is making sure that the incentives, like the motivations, are aligned, right? That the mentors are there for the right reasons and not just there to like pitch their agency or their consultancy or like something like that. And that's I guess like the for me, the bedrock of a mentorship community is to make sure that the mentors they're there because they legitimately enjoy helping and they want to give back. And sure, maybe there is going to be a bit of a transactional exchange, and the reason that we do it is because, like, at the end of the day, it's people's time, and they have to, if they want to charge for it, that's their prerogative. But having said that, though, like, most of the mentors are doing it for free on GrowthMentor, which I find pretty amazing, considering like some of the positions they have are like heads of growth at 7-8 figure companies, and it's like, whoa. But yeah, it's really the incentive of building like this camaraderie around like the mentors. I know a lot of the mentors on GrowthMentor kind of hang out and they have this thing in common. Yeah, so that's kind of my opinion on mentorship community.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. It's very much about bringing people together and helping them build their own camaraderie and community. So as much as they're giving value back to other people, however you come in to build that community, you also want to give value to them. And the biggest value they're going to get is finding either like-minded people or people that they can connect with to do more in their own lives, right? Because that's really what is helping them get through their day-to-day. So that would be the biggest takeaway, I think, for us in terms of building community. It's always give first. That's the bedrock of everything that we do in terms of community building. And how are we able to elevate whatever they're doing more? How can we use our network and the people that we have to help them get connected better and learn more and do more and build on them, because they're taking time out of their day to support these people and do stuff for the founders that we have. So how can we help them in their own way? Yeah.
I love this give first mentality, and like movie I saw when I was 12 years old, Pay It Forward, really like yeah, are you familiar with that? Really changed things for me. And I think like the startup community are particularly like aligned with that paying it forward.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that kind of started in like Silicon Valley, and then as other startup ecosystems were built, they like purposely tried to incorporate that. And I think it's also, maybe it's different from other industries in that, everyone's been there on the ground, therefore we're also more inclined to want to pay it forward, right? Like to grow something from the bottom. But I guess we didn't say this in our intros, but I'm based in London. Foti, as you can tell, maybe is in Greece. Lalitha is in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. But we're also online, so keep in touch. I'm Nicole J. Fu on Twitter. And what's the best way for people to find you online?
I am at Wemel on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, everywhere.
Yeah, Foti.Panagio on Twitter, LinkedIn, and yeah, most places. Yeah, Twitter's my, add me there, follow me there.
Nice. Thank you both so much. This was so fun, and we're recording this on a Wednesday, hump day during lockdown. This was great. And I think we'll invite Felix from WHub back to the stage.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. That was really fun.
Thank you so much.